What is up, my friends? I'm so excited to connect with the Brandon Farbstein. I would say for the first time, but I've had the honor of meeting him in real life a couple of times. Him and his incredible mom. Man, I adore you. I love this book. I love everything that you're about. And the fact that we get to spend some time together today and introduce you to my audience, just the greatest honor. So thanks for jumping on today.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have this conversation and to be here.
Yeah, no, okay. I've listened to so many of your interviews. I've watched so many of your videos. And something that always comes up when I hear you is just like, man, he is so fiery, so much resolve, so much like inner strength. And dude, you're like 20 years old or something like that. I was not that way when I was 20. And the man that you already are, and I was going to talk about the subtitle, the book 10 feet tall. It says step into your truth and change your freaking world. That power, that resolve that you have. I was just curious, was that always you? Was that always Brandon deep down, even as a young man?
Definitely not. It took quite a lot of emotional strength, of turmoil, of getting to the deepest and darkest point in my life to be able to get to the point where I am right now, and not just in who I am, but also how I show up. It really took me discovering what suffering is really like to be able to realize how much strength and power not only was inside of me, but truly that it's universal. And we all are going through something at some point in our life. And for somebody like me, it's obvious and I can't hide it. But for others, it's invisible. And the more that we can open up and share what we're authentically going through, it changes our life, and it's transformational. And I really discovered that at a young age. And I believe it's given me such an incredible opportunity, but also the perspective that I have right now is definitely thanks to that.
Yeah. A few people who don't know who you are, Brandon, young age, what happened at a young age for you? What conclusion did you come to just launch you into this mission right now?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with a rare form of dwarfism when I was 2. And when I say rare, there are less than 100 cases reported in medical history. So you could think about kind of how big that number is compared to the grand scheme of things. And so it comes with a life of uncertainty where I ask doctors, what can I expect in 5, 10, 15 years? And the answer is always, we don't know. So it's always put me in a position to innovate my own solution, to seek out the answers to all the various problems and the adversity that would show up in my life on a daily basis. But also, like I mentioned before, it took me at the age of 11 years old getting to a point where I was very, very close to ending my own life because I didn't see the point. I didn't see anything but darkness and pain constantly. And I came home from school one day and I said to my mom, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this body. I just don't want to live. And thank God, through the support of both my parents and getting professional help, I was able to discover that number one, I wasn't alone in this, but number two, we all have things that we go through. And but we also have an extreme set of gifts and tools that we've been given. And it's up to us to use those.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love your advocacy work. We're going to talk a little bit about that. You know, when you say 11 years old, you're thinking about taking your life. I think sometimes it's super easy for us to, oh, it's just bullying. Oh, it's just kids picking on one another. Oh, it's just this and that, without understanding the deep turmoil and pain that kids are going through with at schools and with among their friends and stuff that we just brush over. When you hear this stuff in the news, these young kids taking their lives,
Yes.
can you speak a little bit to that, about your reality at that age, and how it's not just a hard time or something that kids can just get over, and oh, kids just being kids.
Right. It's beyond a feeling of exclusion. It's feeling totally invisible, yet having so many sets of eyes on you on a daily basis because they saw me for nothing else than my external, the shell that I was in. And I did not feel seen or heard at all for the real Brandon inside of here. And that was especially tough for me because all I wanted was to have a voice, to be heard, to be worthy, to be seen, and to not have that. Yes, it was really difficult, but to layer on top of that the amount of hate and harassment that I got starting in middle school, on social media, especially just for being different, for being who I was born to be, essentially. And I thought that I was doing something wrong. I thought that I was a bad person. And I really believed every comment, every person's opinion that would get thrown at me. And so, as you can imagine, that totally diminished my self worth. And it got to the point where I had none. I had no friends. I really felt like I was a mistake being born. Even after I got to that point at 11 years old, the battle definitely continued, and it got so bad a couple years later in high school that I started getting a new death threat almost every single week from the peers at my school. And I obviously couldn't comprehend that, why something like that would happen, or why other teenagers would say, "Midget, just go kill yourself. You'll never get anybody who loves you," or just some of the most disgusting, degrading things that we could say to one another. And again, I let others' opinions of me dictate who I was and how I felt. And I realized midway through my junior year that it was such a toxic environment, and it was dragging me down in really every sense of my life, beyond my school performance, beyond my mental health, that I had to make a change and I had to pivot. And that's exactly what I did. I started online school, and it ended up being one of the greatest blessings for me, because I was able to complete my schoolwork every single day in about 20 minutes, which, number one, was incredible. And I also recognized how much more time and energy that I had with this new structure. And I wanted to do something with my pain and with my life experience. So that's when I decided to start speaking up and sharing my story. And I was able to get two laws passed in the state of Virginia, where I grew up. One that is a bullying prevention law, and another one, which I'm immensely proud of, requires empathy to be taught in the Virginia public school curriculum, starting in kindergarten and building on every single year until they graduate high school.
And that's why I love you. I not only are you active speaking, but you're also getting your hands dirty in the real work and making things change. I wanted to ask you though, you allude to in your book, this young man that I'm not speaking to right now. It's a completely different person. And this was just a few years ago. I mean, you're 20, like you're thinking like 4 or 5 years ago going through this, like what kind of internal work do you have to go through from, feeling like you had to be a different human, and then also like stepping into your own greatness and finding your voice and finding the
Yeah.
resolve that you have right now? Like what happened internally?
It really was a shift from being the victim of my life and my circumstances to deciding to be the victor, because I saw the point and I saw the purpose that the universe had handed me. And I really found that when I was 15 and I gave a TEDx talk, which was not only my very first speech, but that was the first time that I was authentic and I was genuine, my vulnerability with the world. And the power that I discovered literally in that one moment handed me my life's purpose. And so I truly believe having that mission discovered at an early age gave me that advantage to keep going, having that strength, knowing that I had a purpose and I had a reason for what I was going through. But also, it was during that time, about junior year as well, when I was 17, that I really entered the world of personal development. The
Mm.
first time that I ever went to an event, I was invited to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, one of his premier 3.5 day seminars, where the very first day I walked on fire. And it was really through that I was able to discover how much control we have inside our mind, inside what state we're in, and truly having the ability to change the thoughts and the dialogue that we tell ourselves on a daily basis, getting past limiting beliefs, getting past the things that you thought defined you, you thought dictated who you needed to be, when that was all BS. And I started really rewiring the way that I felt and the state that I was in, starting with gratitude, starting with recognizing what I actually had going for me and not focusing on my weaknesses or the things that I wish that I could change, which I now recognize as my greatest assets. So it's really through that inner work that I was able to make that monumental shift. And I'm so, so grateful that I was able to do that.
We all are, and you're just getting started. So, I was going to ask you about bitterness, anger, resentment, getting over some of that,
Yeah.
forgiving people. Because part of me would be kind of like, well, screw all y'all, you know what I mean? And for you to be able to have hope, for humanity after seeing the ugliest side of us, what has that process been like?
It took quite a lot to not only be able to forgive, but to not have that deep inner anger for these people. And I think what changed for me was when I truly recognized why all of this happens. And it's pretty simple: hurt people hurt people. And until that cycle stops, it's just going to continue. And like I mentioned before, for somebody like me, I'm an easy target. I can't hide. I can't hide the fact that I'm 3'9", and no matter what I try and show up as, being pompous or being arrogant or being overly confident, like I was as a young teenager, because I thought that was covering up my wounds and my battle scars, it's BS, because people could see right through it. But
Yeah.
I also recognize the fact that having so much anger, having so much resentment towards all of these people and the experiences that I went through was not serving me at all. And it truly was dragging me down with it. So I got to the point where I made that realization, but I also wanted to do as much as I could to help those people. And I recognized how much suffering they must have been going through to get to a point where they had to say those things to me. And I understand it now. It doesn't mean that they were okay and that those words still aren't going to stick with me for the rest of my life, because that would be a lie. But if we're able to recognize the fact that everybody has pain, everybody has suffering, and some of us just don't know how to cope with that and what to do with it. So we unleash it on other individuals, and that's obviously unacceptable. But I think us who are light workers and those who want to spread hope and healing, it's our responsibility to see that and to reach out.
That's it. So hope and healing, man. Let's talk about your work. I want to hear what you're up to in the world, how you're making change. You talked about these two laws that you helped pass. What work are you doing right now to change this?
I really am doing as much as I can. A couple things. Number one, to elevate empathy. That is my life's mission. I truly believe that empathy is the key, not only to human connection, but to unlocking our own inner greatness. Because when we have empathy towards ourselves, we're able to recognize who we truly are and the power and the
Mm,
hero that is inside of us. But also, it's changing the lens through which people see the world, both their own light and the people around them, because we all have limiting beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves that we're not good enough, or because we look a certain way we won't achieve something, or whatever it is that goes on inside our head. But that story is lying to you. Your anxiety is lying to you. And so getting to the point where we can, no matter where we're at in life, whether we're a teenager or we're an adult, being able to recognize what those stories are and getting past them. And it's through the content that I create and the speeches that I give, whether it's to a university or a Fortune 100 company, being able to show them who we truly are at our core. We define the definition of ourselves. We have the ability to innovate our own solution. And obviously, how I've been able to do it, but how universal it truly is.
yeah. You said empathy for yourself. Sounds easy, man, but
I know.
there's so many of us struggle with even liking ourselves,
Yes.
being comfortable in our skin. And you're right, that's at the core and the root of it. Where do we begin with that? I mean, you've gone through some stuff. People said things to you. Your mom, your dad abandoned you, left you. I mean, you have some soul wounds, man. Like developing empathy for yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
It really is not only acknowledging who you are fully, but it's learning to love that person. Because if you don't have at least some self love for yourself, how do you expect to love anybody else? If you're not filling your own cup first, you can't make a profound impact on the world. And I believe that's why all of us are here, to make some sort of impact, to make some sort of transformation while we're here on this earth. And so, yes, it's hard, and we all have things that we wish we could change. But the truth of the matter is, we were born to be the people that we are fully, not
Yeah.
covering up, not putting on a plastic face, not showing up as a facade of somebody that we're not. Understand the fact that you have so much inside of you. You've been through a ton, but also the fact you've been able to overcome absolutely every obstacle, every adversity that has gotten in your way up until this point. And me personally, I don't believe that's a mistake.
Amen. Amen. I'd love to hear your thoughts on just kind of leveling up in general. We talked, I think it was before we hit record, about, really seeing opportunity and making different decisions and how we have that power. When you decided, this is what I want to do with my life and I want to level up and lean into this full time, what you've been able to create in a few years is just outstanding. And I was just wondering kind of some of the day-to-day choices that you've maybe changed and made to level up your personal life and just step into the Brandon Farbstein we all know and love right now.
Yeah, really one of the biggest changes that I made, I decided to be really deliberate on who my circle included. And not just the friends that I decided to hang out with, but who took my time on social media, or who I chose to respond to or call. If those individuals did not uplift me or inspire me or somehow empower me to become a better version of myself, I made the decision to walk away, not necessarily burning the bridges in a negative way and starting drama or negativity, but recognizing the fact that sometimes certain people serve us for a short amount of time, but they may not for the long term. And so that has been a huge game changer for me, recognizing who negative energies come from, and also toxic people, whether it's family, it's friends, coworkers, fellow students, whatever it might be. You have to be able to serve yourself first, like I said, and recognize who truly is adding to your life, who's love supporting you and making you be the most you version of you. And media, we all spend, I would imagine, a ton of time, a ton of effort on our platforms, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever it is. You need to be really deliberate on every single person you follow and are friends with. A lot of the times we don't recognize how much energy we absorb from the content that we're seeing every single day. And if you're not doing a great job of that, I guarantee you this will change your life. The more we could cultivate positivity and optimism and just overall joy from loving people, we are going to be so much more uplifted, so much more fulfilled in our own lives, whatever our missions are. So that is my challenge to all of you. Find maybe 3 to 5 people on your social media after you listen to this podcast and decide if they are adding to your life or if they're a negative energy, a negative force that isn't serving you anymore. It's hard to make change, and it could be especially tough to end relationships, but you have to be able to do that for yourself.
Mm. I love that you use the word being deliberate on your platforms. And one thing that I've seen you be deliberate with is you are raw honest with the things that you've had to endure and people, the things that they say to you, very vulnerable, real posts. And I was just wondering about kind of like your decision making process with that of um, saying things that are very hard for people to read, and just facing it, like this is reality, y'all. What's your decision making process with that? What's the reasoning behind it? Why is that important?
The more that I've discovered to be raw and real, like you said, I see the profound transformation and how much it's impacting people. And so it could be extremely tough and extremely painful to go back to that place that I used to be in and uncover these wounds that not necessarily I've tried to get past, but obviously they took a lot to be able to get after. And so it's the more and more that I'm able to open up about myself, that I see others do the same exact thing. We may not all be able to relate to being 3'9", but maybe you could relate to feeling alone, feeling invisible, feeling worthless, feeling like you are in nothing but suffering, because it's universal. We're all human beings. And at the end of the day, we experience the same things, just on a different timeline and on different levels. So I recognize the fact that I have a platform, and I feel a huge responsibility to be not only a role model, but to be an example of somebody who faces extreme adversity, faces uncertainty every day of my life, but I don't choose to let that define how I live my life.
Man, let's talk a little bit about, oh, it's going to so fast, of just empathy of what we can do as leaders, as parents, as teachers, as people with platforms, people who listen to us. What are some like key components of empathy that we need to adopt, or not only ourselves, but also be proactive in leading our families and our audiences in? I mean, what are some just tangible things that you see people missing or doing wrong?
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up parents and families, because I see a lot of parents who are not leading the way, who are not leading by example. And a lot of the fact is, even if your kid is not seeing what you post on social media, your kid is going to feel the effects of you not being a kind person, of you calling somebody a negative name or starting drama, whatever it is. And so it is vital for every parent to recognize the fact, by the way, you all already know this, and I'm not saying anything that you don't know, but you need to model the person that you want your child to become, as hard as it might be, and as much pain that you have to get through to get to that place. It will change your child's life, especially on social media. The amount of power that we all have with one comment, one post, one thing that we release online, if it's negative and if it's damaging, that literally could stop somebody's entire life. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that. I live this. I was almost stopped right in my tracks for a second time that I wanted to end my life in high school, because I saw how much damage social media was doing for me. And the fact that it really is a weapon, but it's also a tool for connection if we use it the right way. So I think for parents especially, you have to be able to do that for your kids, even if it's not for yourself.
What about some warning signs too? There's a lot of people listening to the show I know who work with kids and youth and all of that. I just, I wonder about this going on and people not noticing signs, of bullying or kids who are really struggling and contemplating taking their life. I mean, are there some signs that you can share with us?
It's having those difficult conversations and honestly asking how your child is doing, or to the
Mm,
teachers or those who work with kids, asking how your students are or what they're experiencing, trying to get them to open up, having that level of trust. For me, that was everything. Having people that I was able to open up to, whether it was my therapist, my mom, a teacher that I trusted, being able to share the fact that I was going through something. And for a lot of kids, they're not able to express that. And it takes somebody stepping in and recognizing that they've been down, or they're not eating, or their grades are slipping. All these little red flags that come up along the way, that I think we need to just do a better job of recognizing when they're there, asking, hey, are you okay? Do you need to talk? What can I do to support you? Something that simple, that small, is life changing. And again, I know it because I've lived it.
yeah. Yeah. I was wondering too, just about, this show is for unconventional leaders. So we want to reach those who've come from difficult backgrounds, unconventional backgrounds, and help them step up, use their voice, and make an impact in this world. Um, the hesitancy sometimes we have in doing that, though, because, like you said, you kind of have to face some of your own demons and do the deep work and
Yep.
be bold to put yourself on a platform that hasn't been friendly to you in the past.
Yeah.
Um, the courage that it takes to do that. Now that you've lived that and walked through it and have done this, do you have any advice for those who may have a story that they want to share? They may want to step up more publicly and use their voice, but they're hesitating because of all the fear that's wrapped around that.
Yeah. It's really what, just like you said at the beginning, the subtitle of the book, Step into Your Truth. That is something that we all need to do. It's getting comfortable not only with who you are, but your pain and your wounds. Because
Mm,
if you're not at that point, you are going to get destroyed by social media, destroyed by other people's opinions, because you'll actually listen to them and your self-worth will be wrapped in that. And so we have to be able to recognize everything we've been through and every bit of who we are to really step into that, become as comfortable as we possibly can, and it will empower others to do the same. But until we get to that point, people will see past that facade. It will be a mirror. And we don't want to get to that point because we've all been through enough. And it's easy to get in a hole of trying to be the person for somebody else without being the person for you first.
mm,
It's easy to give advice. It's hard to take it. It's hard to make change, like I said. So do that. Do you and get past those limiting beliefs, get past those inner demons that have stayed with you for years and years. Number one, you deserve that freedom. But number two, the world needs you as you are fully.
mm. Whew. I have one final question for you, Brandon. But before that, y'all buy this book, 10 Feet Tall. It's going to be linked in the show notes. You can find it on Amazon. Powerful read. And I know you are just getting started. And I just want to thank you for being an example to us as leaders of what leadership really looks like, leaning into the uncomfortable. You're going to make history books, man. I am like certain of that because what you've been able to create in a few years is nuts. I can't imagine the next several. Thank you for your time, Brandon. Where can people find you online?
Definitely. Instagram is where I spend the most amount of time. My username is at Farbstein. Would love if you followed me on there. Also, Facebook. My page is Brandon Farbstein and my website, brandonfarbstein.com. But Heather, it has been such an honor and your words truly mean the world to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Very last question. Let's say we were to go back just a few years ago to this young man. About midway through the book, you were talking about walking around the halls of your school and not being the big-hearted person that you knew yourself to be, and just really not living your truth and dealing with so much. If you were to go back to that Brandon who had no idea what was about to happen to his life, and tell him one thing that you understand now that he did not know back then, what would that be?
Man, this is bringing tears to my eyes. I think the number one thing that I would say is the pain is going to be worth it. And it's going to lead you to something that you could never imagine you would be able to achieve, not just for yourself, but for the help and the service that you'll be able to provide to millions of people. And it's just been the greatest honor of my life being able to be this person and stepping into the role that I'm in now. Could not imagine doing anything else.
I can't imagine you doing anything else either, friend. Thank you so much for your time. It was an honor connecting with you.
Thanks, Heather.